Good morning, everybody. It is Thursday, June 19th. I'm Jane Johnston with the Briar Hill Group at Remax Camosun. Welcome to the Victoria Real Estate Show. I'm here with...
Hey everybody, Andrew Plank here with Royal LePage Coast Capital and the Vibe Collective. How are you?
And...
Jen Lowe, mortgage broker with Dominion Lending Center's Modern Mortgage Group. Good to see you guys.
How's everybody doing today?
A little tired today, but doing okay.
Good. What makes you tired?
Been working till midnight every night and out all days and working on weekends and just, it's been really busy. So
I agree.
Feeling
it. Been very busy.
Starting to catch up on me. Yeah.
Cool. And how's business with you, Jen?
It's been very busy. Lots of mortgages coming up for renewal, refinances, and the purchases are starting to pick up here as well.
Awesome. Okay, well, we have a guest speaker today. We're going to be talking about the Arizona real estate market. And I see we already have numerous people watching with us, so that's going to be exciting. But first, let's just do our stats. So,
actually, we're going to get an update first from Jen Lowe, yes.
Yeah, well, nothing too exciting. We're just watching what's happening south of the border, as there's definitely some warning signs that could ripple into Canada with the US job numbers are really softening. And this can have an effect on it has effect on the bond yields, which then can affect the interest rates, increase them. For the fixed rates, variable rates, we're hoping that there's going to be a rate reduction at the next Bank of Canada rate announcement, which is end of July.
Okay.
Is anything that's going on in the Middle East likely to affect things? Or we've had things happening all over the world that have been of concern, but it just feels like maybe things are wrapped up a little more. And what might anything outside of Canada, US do to impact our situation here?
I think it definitely can have a ripple effect. It depends on, our interest rates are really directly tied to what happens in the US with the Fed. If they choose to raise rates or their inflation goes up, we tend to really back off and put the brakes on. I think that's above my head, honestly. I think it does, it ripples into our economy, it ripples into the US economy, which then does have an effect, but not directly.
Interestingly, I was talking to somebody who's an investment advisor yesterday. I asked them if they're moving money out of the US, and they said no, which surprised me. He said that basically Canadian companies are tied really closely to American companies, and there's a lot of backing and forthing. So he didn't think that it would be easy to do that. I don't know.
The main words that are thrown around right now is that uneasy and uncertainty, or people aren't certain, and when that happens, people just put the brakes on. So
yes,
we're
on
hoping
investments, on hiring, on
everything,
anything economy wise. Yeah. Everybody becomes more conservative, tightens their belts, gets concerned. Okay, got it. Thank you.
So what's the percentage chance of a next rate reduction? Do you know?
Right now, I think it's about 50-50. As the numbers roll out with what the Fed does in the US, that can signify whether or not we're going to drop. If they drop, more than likely we will. But we'll just have to see.
I think last time I heard from you say that we were looking at maybe 2 more drops this year was kind of what's on the expected horizon. So that's pretty positive, 50 basis points overall, at least.
Yes. And that is still the expectation. It's just a matter of when they do those
Right.
drops.
Front load them or make them later in the year. And okay, got it. Good. Well, thank you, Jen.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay, I just have a bit of a crisis with a client right now. Their hot water tank burst. Anyway.
Oh, no.
Okay, Andrew, you want to do the 7-day market watch?
Hold on a second, though. I just want to speak to that. Like, there's all these crises that we as realtors, like, what can we do? What can you do about that, Jane? There's a hot water tank burst. What can you in this moment do about that? But we are always dealing with these crises.
Okay, so they bought a few years ago. The seller called, not really knowing what was going on with the hot water tank and the sorry, somebody's playing something quite loud. They didn't know what was going on. They'd never had a hot water tank burst before. So the first thing I said was, well, I want you to take pictures of what's happening, because the water will be there and then it'll go. So you want to know where the water's being, and you want to also explain that to your insurance company. And I asked her if she could look at the date on the hot water tank to determine the age. They're not sophisticated homeowners. So I was suggesting.
I hope they're not watching this.
Nope. I hope this is good advice anyway. Take a picture of the serial number so that you know the age of the hot water tank, and then just determine whether or not you have it in warranty or not. If it's in warranty, it'll be covered by insurance, and if it's not, it's likely not to be covered by insurance.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah. So they say replace your hot water tank every 8 to 10 years. Make sure you get on top of that. Replace it before warranty goes up.
I wouldn't necessarily know to take a picture of where the water is, so where it's going. That's a good piece of advice there too.
How about, I know you've already told them to do this or they've already done it, but how about turn off the water?
I did. I told them to turn off the water.
Yeah, that's like, get that water turned off. Get it turned off. Know where your main water shut off is for the entire house. Like, that's such an important thing to know for any kind of leak, because when something happens and you're panicking and you can't get to it, you got to get down and do that. Okay, sorry to sideshow this, but I just felt like that was something that we should probably just jump.
Yes, I often get calls like that after sales, like years. This is years later. Anyway, okay, go ahead.
Right. So this is our 7-day market watch update. So what we're looking at here is what's happened this week versus last. So this week we've had 348 new listings come online versus 394 the week before. So a little bit less in terms of inventory coming online. Also a little bit less in terms of properties pending, 182 versus 212 the week before. Few less price decreases. I mean, they're pretty much on par, 219 versus 222 the week before. And then 52 properties expired, so a little more than the week before, which was 43. So less new listings, less sales, a little bit less in price decreases, but virtually the same. A little more expiring kind of suggests, I've been what are we at? 3,700 listings on the market right now, somewhere plus or minus. Been predicting maybe getting up to 4,000 by end of summer. But then Jen and I are both experiencing quite busy times, and I'm sure you are too, Jane. So maybe we're going to start seeing inventory coming down. But
well, this interests me because the inventory is coming down, but the pending is coming down as well. We'll see what the ratios are. But the fact that the price decreases are remaining steady says to me, people are saying we have a runway of a market between March and I would say the end of September. And when we get to June, we're halfway through that. So we really need to just sort of be aware that the runway for the good market is coming to a close. And so some people are like, let's get this place sold. If you want this place sold this year, let's start working on this and let's get serious. So I always look at the range of comparables and figure out where we are in the range and where the activity is happening. And so that's where the price decreases happen. If you're not getting the showing, it's probably either a marketing or a price issue.
Marketing or price and combination of. Yeah, that runway you talk about, it's interesting because the further we get into the year, the more conversations we start to have about, the seller saying, I think I might wait till next spring now. I think I'll just wait till next spring. I'm not going to try for this now.
Which is why if you want a deal, you want to really go at the end of the year because those people are really motivated to sell.
The people who are choosing to sell rather than wait. Although I always suggest, again, you and I may differ on this, but I always say there's no better time than the present. If you want to sell, then now's the time to sell. You don't know what the future is going to hold. We've all seen property values go up and we've seen them go down. So who knows what happens next spring? Yep,
exactly. There's less competition in the fall. So there's an argument either way.
Yeah, there's always an argument either way. So our ratio is pretty consistent here. List to sell, 52.3% of properties listing versus selling. Versus 53.81 the week before. So we're slightly down, but pretty close. Nothing dramatically changed here.
Yeah, just the price decreases. All right. So we're looking. Yes.
So is that signifying a buyer's market or a balanced market?
I think we're in a buyer's market.
Yeah, I do too.
What did you say? Balanced.
Well, we were having a discussion at an event on Tuesday, and there was a couple of brokers who were saying that, oh no, we're in a balanced market, and I was kind of like, I kind of feel like it's a buyer's market given the amount of properties available.
It really depends. Okay, it depends on the area that you're selling. It depends on the price range that you're in. There are all these micro markets, so you generally. Statistically, we're in a balanced market, but I think I'm finding coming to terms with pricing.
Outside of the statistics, you guys, the seller's market we experienced, just during COVID times, and we've experienced in the past where properties list, they immediately sell to multiple offers. Buyers are out there sometimes writing up to 10 offers, losing out before either giving up or going crazy and making an unconditional offer well above asking price and helping to bump the market up and buying. That was a seller's market to an extreme. But a buyer's market to me is, buyers truly have a lot of choice. They can really dictate all of the terms. They've got a lot of sellers are on market for a very, very long period of time and things are not really selling. That's sort of the other side of the spectrum, extreme. I don't feel like we're getting there I don't think we're there yet. I still think we're balanced. And I've said this before, but on the buyer side of balanced, but I don't think we're blood in the water buyer's market.
Ooh, that's terrible. But anyway, it's when a buyer can come to you and say, you know what, if we don't want your place, we're just going to go after another. That's a buyer's market.
That to me, that's balanced. That's balanced. Oh. It's somebody offers a reasonable property for sale. There's a reasonable chance of it selling. I still think that's the case. A buyer offers a reasonable price and there's a reasonable chance of it being accepted. All of that, the buyers have choice. That's to be expected. I don't think this is I think we've just been so used to markets where things snapped up and sold so quickly. This feels like a buyer's market by comparison, but it's really feels more balanced to me.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, that's good.
That's the quickest way to end an argument.
Disagree. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes, dear.
Net unconditional sales. We're looking at June 2024 compared to June 2025. We are at 375 this month, this year, and that's compared to 661 last year. for June. We are at new listings 808, and that's compared to 1,495. And total active listings, we're at 3,763, and that's compared to 3,459. And Rick is saying, I heard online that Canadians want to sell U.S. property because of the current administration in the USA. Well, this is a good segue because
it's a perfect segue.
Our next speaker is Tricia Lehane. She is from Arizona, and she's going to be talking about what's happening with the Arizona market. Welcome, Tricia.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I have known Jane Johnston now probably for close to 10 years. I think we met at Activate in Winnipeg a lifetime ago. Yes, the market's very interesting right now. It's due to what's happening politically, and lots of Canadians are selling because they don't want to have anything to do with the U.S. And that's what I would really like to speak to, is how important it is to have a realtor that has the experience, but mainly the resources when they get ready to sell their home, because if the money is sent to the IRS, which is 15% withholding, and probably several states, probably at least a dozen states also have a withholding. And it's not a tax, it's capital gains.
Oh, it's gone, like 50% gone?
15% is sent to the IRS. So they have to have a tax identification number. They have the FERPTA withholding. There's also in some states a withholding. I think Hawaii is probably the highest. They have almost 10% withholding.
We have a 25% withholding here, but it's not what foreign sellers absolutely pay, but it has to be held back until they have cleared the Canadian Revenue Agency made their assessments and know exactly what are owed. That's taken out of it. The remainder goes back to the seller.
And that's similar here. Okay. But I have heard horror stories that within the past 2 years, a Canadian homeowner here actually had their neighbor, because they thought that was the right thing to do, to list their home. And she actually sold it as well. And she had never dealt with a foreign national selling their property. And that 15% on a $2 million property is still sitting at the IRS.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
So
that's a lot of money.
What's the percentage ownership of Canadians in your area?
Probably about 25,000 homeowners. So that would be probably 8 to 10%.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
But I mean, speaking to selling, I mean, Florida, because of the hurricanes, the interest rates, the difference in the dollar, insurance. I was actually on a Zoom a couple of days ago, and a realtor out of our Tucson office said his dad just paid for their insurance for their family home. It was $22,000 for a year.
So are people from Florida moving to Arizona then for the weather? And
right now, no
chance of flooding.
I think because of the political climate. And I'll tell you, most Canadians know more about what's going on in the U.S. than most Americans do.
Wow.
No, I'm serious. It's
just
because
to also
you get
say, just
Pardon
to
me?
interrupt here, Tricia did live in Canada. So she's lived, where have you lived?
Manitoba. My parents chose, I grew up in Colorado. My parents in the late 70s chose to move to Manitoba. I've lived in every Western province, even the Yukon Territory, and moved here from Kelowna.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And Kelowna Canada still has a huge part of my heart, but especially Kelowna.
Didn't Rob Bailey move from Kelowna too? Is everybody leaving Kelowna to go down to warmer climes and sell real estate?
Yes, he did.
We've got another colleague who sells real estate in Puerto Vallarta.
Oh,
and he moved from Kelowna. That's funny.
So yes, realtor is essential, especially a realtor who understands working with a foreign national and all the tax implications. Are you finding that Canadians have a realistic expectation of the process, and how long is it taking for properties to sell, and what's the average price? Is it coming down? All these questions.
So to date in 2025, we've actually sold more homes than we did in 24. However, as I say that, we have a lot more listings on the market. So, and you were speaking to your timeline. So here in Arizona, our most highest buying time is and selling is basically starts off the early February and really start softening May, June. Believe it or not, I mean, some of our kids start, depending on what part of the city, they start going back to school in July, and they might get off, you know, mid-May. So they want to move and be settled before the kids go back to school. And, you know, I mean, we have a analyst here that studies our MLS. Actually, he's from the UK, but have a great presenter here. And she said, especially in luxury properties, when it starts hitting 100, luxury buyers stop coming to Arizona. So it's yeah. So I think we're going to be 114 today. And just to give you an idea, we're 41 is 100. 41 Celsius is 100.
Celsius.
So
yeah. So you've got the air conditioning on.
So what's an average house price right now in where you are? Is Phoenix, right?
Well, I'm in Scottsdale, but the average right throughout the valley is 472,000, and average days on market is about 72. But it depends on the area. Not every city is in a seller's market, but like my MLS covers it's about the same size as Los Angeles. We just don't have as dense population, but we are the 5th largest city in the United States.
Sorry.
Pardon me? They did have a peaceful no king last weekend, but I did not participate.
Okay.
This working for a living interferes with playtime.
I know it does get in the way of these things. We had the No Kings demonstrations here in Canada even. So it sounds like just kind of, you know, people are buying when they want to be there. So for example, if I was a Canadian wanting to travel to Arizona, I'm going to be going down there as a snowbirder in our winter. And that's going to be when, if I was down there traveling with my partner and we're looking around thinking, well, what about Arizona real estate? It's beautiful here this time of year. That's when we're going to start. Maybe we're most likely to pull the trigger. We're not going to be traveling in summer in Arizona going, oh boy, we'd really love to live here. So your market is seasonal that way, right?
Well, it is. However, as you say that, so in 2008, I sold my first $1 million home to a Canadian from Vancouver. And he said to me, and I worked with him almost a year before he purchased, but he started at 500,000 and he kept upping his budget and bought in a beautiful community here called Greyhawk. And he said to me, Trish, you should be coming to Vancouver to do a workshop because Vancouver loves Scottsdale. So I was going to Winnipeg that summer for a family vacation. So I said to my late husband, I think I'd like to do a workshop in Vancouver or Winnipeg as a dress rehearsal for Vancouver. So in the beginning, and I've done workshops in every Western Canadian city. And the matter of fact, I presented at Jane's office with RBC Bank. That was before COVID. So yes, it's amazing to me how many of my Canadian clients come here in the summer, like Manitoba. They know they're going to have guaranteed hot. So,
right.
So we have a lot of Canadians come even in the summer.
There's a lot of bugs in Manitoba in the summer too.
Yes.
There's a lot of snakes in Scottsdale. Yuck.
Yeah.
Are there Canadians still looking to buy? We do have somebody who's commented here. I'm looking to buy new construction in Phoenix, but builders seem to want 2023 prices. I'm assuming he's talking about a new home.
New construction right now is one of the best opportunities to purchase. And I will talk a little bit more about our growth. we don't have natural disasters in the valley. They're building a $25 billion Taiwanese $100 billion Taiwanese semiconductor plant. And the reason we are getting that plant is because we don't have natural disasters. We actually, through our global committee last fall, had a commercial presenter speak to us, and he said he asked why. And I said, because we don't have natural disasters. And he sort of continued that story, saying he had been out in California a couple of weeks before he presented. He said there was a shake. It was enough of a shake that they could not have a semiconductor plant in California. So our growth for investment opportunities is incredible. But a lot of the reasons Canadians are selling as well and our insurance has gone up, probably from about $2,200 a year on an average home to $2,800, but minimal in comparison to a lot of the states that Canadians do buy in. I mean, I was shocked when I heard that $22,000, but in a lot of situations, they can't even get insurance. So, I mean, that's very risky. So, but plus, the Canadian dollar, a lot of Canadians purchased their homes pretty well when we had the foreclosure short sales. Like I sold some $60,000 homes in the outlying areas that were foreclosures and short sales that you can't touch today for less than $350,000. So as I say that, the Canadian dollar was almost at par. And when Trump announced the tariffs, the Canadian dollar went to $1.38. Right. So, and I think it's been averaging just under $1.35 up to about $1.37. So every dollar they spend, that's $1.35 that they have to spend. So I'm sure it's prohibitive for a lot of people to be able to maintain that growth.
Yeah, 30% extra.
Yeah. And if it was bought as an investment and you're thinking about, what's my off ramp? When do I choose to sell off my investment in the United States? Now is probably a good time for that, considering the different exchange rates.
It is. Yeah. And I actually have clients from northern Vancouver Island that had a home in Edmonton. They moved to Vancouver Island and they had a condominium here. And they sold it during COVID, and I helped them buy new construction just by being on Zoom. And her question to me before they left in the spring and into March, do you think that the border will get closed? I said, honestly, I don't think anybody knows what might happen.
Well, there are Canadians being turned back at the border, especially if they're showing up. Like I have some friends who drive RVs down there and spend the winter, and the U.S. border is turning some of them back.
Really? Wow.
I mean, I'm sure that's always happened. I mean, like the question becomes, is it happening more? I know that whenever there's something in the news that catches the news cycle's attention, then
it's
we see it all.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the numbers are in terms of increase. I'm sure anecdotally it has. And I'm sure nobody really, a lot of Canadians, myself included, are just choosing not, choosing, if given the choice, not going down to the States.
Yeah.
Or maybe if they're going down, they're choosing to rent rather than purchase, maybe.
Well, as you say that, Jane, and you had mentioned that in our email, I think probably what is an amazing opportunity is for Canadians that have great equity in their property. It is a good time to look at selling because they're getting the growth in the value of the property, sometimes up to 10 times of the value, maybe not 10, but 6 to 8. And then the difference in the Canadian dollar. I mean, but that is also part of the withholding. So, and when I sell a property to a Canadian, I always tell him, I've built a spreadsheet for you. I'm going to email it to you. I give them a folder. And I said, track every expense you have, because when you go to sell your property, you'll be
Right.
glad you have that documentation.
Every dollar that you've spent towards the home, you're going to get back, or at least
Yes.
you're not going to lose out because you're able to account for it.
So
And-
what does a $450,000 an average home you were saying?
For yeah, in the 450 between 450 and 500.
So that's
What does
like
that look like?
600? Yeah, what does that look like?
Well, it depends on the area. In Scottsdale, our average home price is just over 1.2 million. But actually, Scottsdale, Arizona was rated #1 for luxury home buyers in the United States just within the last month. And even though our average price here is higher than a lot of areas, it's much more affordable than California. So a $450,000 home, 450 to 500, would be in the outlying areas, probably. And I sort of use Sky Harbor Airport as the center. You're probably 45 minutes to an hour from Sky Harbor Airport, but it would be newer because it's in the outlying communities. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. Some homes might have a pool and a 2-car garage, and newer, at least probably built in 2010, sort of when that whole foreclosure short sale scenario started happening.
Are any Americans leaving Scottsdale for
They
Canada?
are. As a matter of fact, I stopped by clients over the weekend, and they know doctors that are moving to Vancouver because they don't feel they're being treated right. So, and I'm sure there will be more, but I have no idea how that could even be tracked.
Right. There is talk of the brain drain and the talent drains as people are choosing to leave.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very much like the book Atlas Shrugged back in the day. But anyway, that's a whole other
So that word respect,
yeah.
RESPECT, I don't think we're seeing much of that all around the world right now, especially starting from the United States.
Jen, do you have any questions?
Well, I'd like to go back to when you mentioned that 15% withholding. So like on a $450,000 home, that's like $67,500 that's held back from the sale, and Canadians would have to wait like approximately how long to receive that amount of money?
So it used to be, when I started working and selling with Canadians, you could file what's called an 8288. But one of the biggest things that they have to do is get a tax identification number. And if people have had properties here as an investment, they already have a tax ID number. But if they're just selling, if they've used it for their own personal use, they wouldn't have a tax ID number. So back starting probably in 10, 11 up to COVID, they could file what's called an 8288. But the FERPTA company, accounting firm, have to submit, they're the ones that file for the tax ID number. People can do it, but it's very complicated. So that money, when it's sent to the IRS, they used to be able to apply for it, and within 6 months, let's say if they sold their home in January, probably by the fall at the latest, they would have the difference in their withholding back. So since COVID, now it's not that way at all. So if you sold your house in January, you would file your taxes with the IRS here, and then after that, you would get your money back.
What is the actual capital gain charge? So, I mean, the withholding tax is what's withheld while they calculate the capital gains, but what does it cost a Canadian to sell when it comes time to sell?
Oh, good question. Like, what's your commission on? We're not supposed to ask that, but what
aside of commission, what are the other costs of selling?
It's probably about 6 bananas. 3 bananas for the listing agent and 3 bananas for the
Americans will use anything but the metric system.
So yeah, it's but again, I mean, and I'm on different chat groups and stuff. I see Canada's very seriously thinking about going to the buyer's agent. And when it came effective last August here, I was very nervous about it because Arizona is not one of the states that you had to have that identified to represent a buyer. So, but I have found, and because we are in a buyer's market, I have not had any issues of getting my commission from the seller still to this day. But I mean, when it first hit, because the biggest thing is what commission is being paid is not in MLS when you pull up a listing. Mm-hmm. And so in the very beginning, I called realtors, the listing agents, and said, are you paying a commission and what is it? Well, I don't do that anymore at all. I just go ahead, I write the contract, and we have a seller addendum that the sellers agree to pay that commission. Of course, it's always negotiable as it always has been.
This is a conversation, a fulsome conversation perhaps for another day, although getting into commission discussions is also fraught with danger. But it is. But the fact is that we're probably all having to move towards buyer commission at some point, given where things are going, where we negotiate with our buyers. You want to help me, we want us to help you find a home. This is what it's going to cost you. If the seller is offering anything, we'll take it out of what you're paying us. And at the end of the day, there's clarity for everyone. But I want to go back a couple steps. So outside of the commission, there's the withholding tax. What does it cost someone after IRS gives them back the remainder? What is the capital?
Upwards of 8 to 9% of the sales price.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we have title companies here instead of lawyers. They do all of the research and information, and it's the title company that actually looks after that documentation.
Yeah.
So, and here's something. Sorry.
I think it's very important when you go to buy in another country, because I'm working with a Canadian who was living in the US, and I have to keep going over what the next steps are, because just culturally, it's very different to buy and sell than it is here. It's very cut and dried here in Victoria. Jen?
It is. One other question. Property taxes. What are property taxes like on a $450,000?
Probably 8 to 10,000 a year, depending on the area.
Wow.
That's way more than it is here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a fair bit.
But we don't have a we don't have a GST tax here.
Right.
So.
It's very interesting. Like, I've spoken to other U.S. realtors, and when people complain about the taxes here, our income tax, but
in Canada,
they get taxed a lot of different ways.
You pay the piper. You pay the piper one way or another. Going back to Rick's question about, in general, he was asking about new construction, and you'd mentioned, Tricia, that there were more opportunities in new construction. You felt like there was an opportunity. Where are the opportunities for even now buying? And what would you be if someone is coming to you with $500,000 US dollars or $750,000 US dollars to say, like, do the best you can for me? What are you thinking?
Well, a $500,000 home would definitely be in the outlying areas, and I think the biggest thing that new construction is offering is interest rates. Like, I had an email come into my box this morning that they're offering 3.99%, which compared to our normal rate right now, just around 7%. And that's for the life of the mortgage. And that's something that I really wanted to speak to too. In the United States, if you had the opportunity in 2022 to have a mortgage at 3%, that's for the life of the mortgage. We don't have to refinance here. But if we want to refinance, we can, and it's not nearly as costly. As well, we can actually write off our interest on our mortgage here in the United States. And to get financing approval here is probably close to 30 days. We can get it approved, but for closing, you write your contract today, you wouldn't, most likely. In some situations, I have had a closing in 21 days with financing, but of course here the home has to appraise as well. So I think with what we went through with the commission and everything, so even the appraisers now, they have to phone the seller's agent and find out what commission was paid, opposed to just
Right.
yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, so let's just go over this, just the form here of how we do this. So they write the offer. Then it's subject to an appraisal.
Yes, and also subject to a home inspection.
The appraisal it's different. Is it different than financing? Because the financing would qualify the buyer, the appraisal qualifies the house.
Basically, yeah, totally right.
It's here it's the bank that gets the appraisal.
Yes, same here.
Yes. Okay.
But it used to be during the whole short sale foreclosure. I mean, that's why it was so crooked, is they were selecting specific appraisers. Now it's put into a giant box, and whoever you get appointed to do that appraisal does the appraisal.
Right.
And appraisers can kibosh the deal if the house doesn't qualify for what the buyer paid.
They can, but we haven't been seeing very much of that since COVID. I mean, but like I said, I mean, even our luxury market since COVID has almost doubled. Like,
what do you mean?
So if somebody had purchased a home in 2023, it's on the market today for $1.5 to $2 million. It's on the market here for at least $3.5 to $4 million.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
That's how much the growth has increased. But like I said, in some of the outlying areas, it's going to be, a $60,000 home. You can't touch that for less than $360,000.
Gotcha.
Sorry, one more thing I'll just add in there. Because of the insurance issues, it's really affected our homeowners associations as well, especially on townhomes and condos. Like in some situations, they've gone up from $250 a month to $350 a month. And that's like your strata fees.
That's right.
For
and
here,
that's to cover the increase in insurance.
It's going to be high. A condo, you can get a condo for $450 here, and you're going to pay between like probably $400 to $600 in strata fees easily.
So when I hear, in Scottsdale, 1.25 million for the average home, that's US dollars, and and some people listening to this might say, oh, that's a lot of money. Others might say that's not a lot of money. And certainly for those outlying areas relative to Victoria, that's a lot less money than you would pay for a home here. But I think the real question becomes, and when you were talking, you could have bought a home for $60,000 when things were underwater. But I'm always more curious about where are things going. Like if like $1 million today might seem like a lot, but tomorrow, or let's say next year or 5 years from now, when it's 2 million or 5 million, that's going to seem cheap again. So, oh my gosh, I wish I'd paid that money back then. What are you still seeing an upwards trajectory, even though we're talking about Canadians leaving and selling off, but that's a small percentage of the marketplace.
It is.
And you're talking about the Taiwanese semiconductor factory being built and, infrastructure and investment coming in. You sound like you're bullish on the future and positive about where things are going.
Absolutely.
What's your take on this?
Well, it's not just the Taiwanese semiconductor plant. There's another $60 billion being invested in the valley just of plants to support that Taiwanese semiconductor plant. They're building the largest Honor Health right here in Scottsdale. I mean, honestly, in my business journal email every day, there's new announcements as to what's coming to Arizona. And even though we do have hot, it's still a very, very, very desirable place to have a home. And I honestly, I don't see our prices dropping in any way significantly at all. But I think the growth will continue to be huge.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think that is a good way to end today's show. If you guys have anybody who may be interested in this, please share it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to us on YouTube and Facebook. And thanks, Rick, for commenting on our show today. We appreciate that. Share this out to your friends. In the meantime, Tricia, how do people get in touch with you?
My phone number is 602-689-9977, and my email is Tricia@Arizona Canadian Connection, and they can scan my card, and that will download my information for them. And okay. And my Instagram is Tricia@ChooseAZHomes.
Okay, it's ArizonaCanadianConnection.com, right?
Yes.
Okay. Andrew, how do people reach you?
You can reach me at andrewplank.com, email info@andrewplank.com, or call text at 250-360-6106. But don't send me a WhatsApp, as Jane knows I won't get back to you.
I did this morning. Jen, how do people reach you?
I am at 250-217-4925. Email is jen@jenlow.ca, and my website is jenlow.ca.
And you're on Instagram as?
JLow Mortgage Broker.
Okay. And I'm Jane Johnston. I'm with the Briar Hill Group at Remax Camosun. My number is 250-744-0775. My email is jane@briarhillgroup.com. Although, actually, a better one's briarhillgroup@gmail.com. And you can reach me on the web at briarhillgroup.com. And we are on Instagram also as Briar Hill Group. Or you can follow me about lifestyle in Victoria at realtyteacher_Remax_Victoria. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next Thursday at 9:30. Have a great day. Take care.
Thanks, Tricia. Thanks, Jane and Jen. See you guys next week.
See you next week.